No, not really. I didn't write it down on
Increasing female participation in paddle sports, Nouria Newman.
now.
Hello, everyone. We had to come up with a catchy title so that you guys would come and listen to this conference. But we're probably going to extend the topic to the place of women in paddle sport and not just necessarily like increasing growth, because the problematic is so much bigger. And yeah, not just for participants, but also for active members of the industry. So that's why we are a lot here. All of the A's. We have Kara, Jutta, Anna, and Naina. And yeah, it feels like we have these conversations over and over about women in sports. And we've come a long way, right? Joel. I'm stressed out, so sorry, guys. So that was just 10 days ago. Laura was in Lofer for the event, and she posted a fun photo on her social media and got a lot of not so nice comments about people wanting to invite themselves or male that wanted to get on top of her. So these things are still happening within the sport. And if you were to ask me how I see the place of women in paddle sport, my starting point would be, how do you navigate a male-dominated sport? And it's just like class fives. There are many ways to do it. And luckily for this talk, you're not stuck with me, because otherwise you would probably be bored as hell and have like to listen to like gender regimes and Bourdieu's field theory applied to whitewater kayaking. So we have guests here that are gonna help us keep this better and not so boring. Also, there is no right or wrong. We are not pretending to give any answer. We hopefully come up with different perspective, and maybe we can hold together, get some good ideas. So if you want to bring any point in the audience, if you want to ask any question, like, feel free to participate at any point. And yeah, you can raise your hand, we can run and give you a microphone, and that way maybe we can make it good and have good ideas all together. And maybe we don't need to have this talk next year or the year after. So I would start maybe with you, Anna. You're working marketing and communication at NRS. You were the editor of Kayak Session, also active paddler. How did you get into the sport?
I started kayaking actually because at summer camp as a kid in North Carolina. And the joke in my family is that my sister thought the instructors were cute because they had cool accents and they never were wearing their shirts. And then it turns out that the sport was super fun and super good for the family. And so my mom actually decided to join a canoe club in Philadelphia in the United States. And she wanted someone to learn with. And so she dragged me into the sport. I was very scared. I hated it a lot. And then it kind of slowly took over my life. So I would say summer camp, my sister, and then my mom. So a bit through family. And yeah.
Cool. Gender stereotypes go both ways. It got you into the sport. Jutta, what about you?
Well, I grew up in a family of kayakers, and interestingly enough, I think my mum was a kayaker in the family and then got my dad into it. So, but when I was a child, the whole family kayaked, and I had no choice. But I'm very grateful to my parents that they introduced me to the sport, because it has taken over all of my life, and I'm really happy about it.
Anything?
That's it. Yeah, I think closer.
Okay. Very similar, which is interesting, because I've been on several of these kind of panels lately, and I'm usually the odd one out. But I've been kayaking for 46 years now. Started as a kid in the front of the canoe with my dad. He wanted to fish, so he dragged me along. I was immediately very bored, so he built me a kid-sized kayak. So this was in the 70s. Yeah.
John said it was earlier.
Yeah, my husband likes to say it was like in the 30s. It feels like it. So I just learned to paddle just going alongside of the canoe, and I could go off on my own. My first paddle length was a 210. I remember that. So probably like twice as tall as me. So, and just like everyone so far, paddling has taken over my life from there.
I hope you don't paddle a 210 anymore.
What?
Naina, how did you get into this sport?
So I was introduced to kayaking when I was 13 by my uncle. And I think for someone like me coming from a non-paddling family background, but my uncle was luckily there. So that was like a privileged thing that I think that I could get introduced like that, but because it's very rare from where I come, and I'm very far from any river community. It's 300 kilometers away. So he had a rafting company in Rishikesh, and he said, why don't you just try kayaking? I was there to spend my winter vacations in Rishikesh, which is actually the yoga and the rafting hub in India. And I said, what's kayaking? Because I didn't know how to swim. It was very unusual for me to be in the water because I'd never gone swimming or been in an environment like that. And being small, I was like really scared seeing such massive boats and then carrying them, going to the river. So I think it was the calling of the Ganga River, and I came, and now I think I'm trying to build my life around it. And so, yeah.
And I'm going to bounce off the next question. Since you have the microphone already, you can just get started. Did you encounter any limitation as a woman within, your way up to your kayaking career where you're at right now?
I think from the start, it was something that I had never imagined that I would even like. Starting from my family, my parents were not happy. They didn't know what kayaking was, and the society and the relatives especially, they said, why don't you send your daughter to a dance class? And I was already a good dancer, but they were like, she can keep doing that, kayaking is not for her, and it's a male-dominated sport, you're risking your daughter's life. So that was the initial limitation, how to get out. But then when I was kayaking, I felt so much discomfort in the sport itself, rolling and swimming again and again and being rescued and by the boys around me. And I had never been around so many men, I came from an all-girls convent school. So we had very strict female environment and very disciplined. And I was like in the world of adventure, and it was very different. So I think the first step was for me to believe in myself and not to listen. And I think when I started kayaking, everyone said she's not going to reach anywhere because she's a woman. And now I'm sitting here and people say she's gotten here because she's a woman. So I don't know how to respond to that, but the only thing that I know is I have not really paid attention to these things and just kept going forward, because there are so many barriers, so many limitations, especially coming from a society where women are not seen to be so much in the outdoors. And in India especially, I think kayaking is that one sport which has the least women. So I think that is something that I really want to change, because we have so many amazing rivers in India and very strong women in India. So yeah.
Jutta, you had any limitations or hardship with your kayaking?
Of course, when you start as a small female or a small girl into kayaking, it's the equipment alone. The boats are huge, the boats are heavy, the equipment sometimes, was just not appropriate. And I think from there we've come a long way. If you look at the industry now, there's so many things that have been done and developed to make life for us, way better in terms of lighter kayaks, smaller kayaks, gear that fits, gear that respects the female anatomy, that, it really, is comfortable to use. So in that way, I think we've come a long way. On a different perspective, I think same, all of us, we have experienced these male-dominated groups, where you are on a river, on a day, when you think, people here make me feel I do not belong. And you have to fight for your place and say, no, I do belong here. You know, I'm capable as the same as you are. So I think, I had this experience in my life.
I'll speak to that. And so, while those of us up here, I think, are primarily whitewater kayaking in background, we all have engaged in other types of paddle sports and worked in the industry. I worked as a raft guide, as many people I'm sure here have, like when coming up and learning how to kayak. And I was telling New the other night that I actually had a boss when I was learning that told me point blank, it doesn't matter how good you are as a guide, you will never be a trip leader with this company, because in times of crisis, people don't look to a small female for leadership to feel safe on the river. They want to see the biggest guy out there, even if he's not the best guide or the best trip leader. And I was like, F you. You just lost me. Like, I'm one of your better guides, and I'm not going to continue working here. I'm going to go out and find people that aren't focused on my gender or these limitations that you're perceiving based on my size or my age or my gender or any of that, and like look at someone that like sees my skills and sees my willingness to work hard. And I think that's I think that speaks to a lot of the social economic barriers that exist outside of paddle sports, and like for women in sport or women in male-dominated fields as a whole.
Good luck with that, Kara.
I guess I have to echo a lot of the same things. As Jutta, the gear starting out as a small woman was certainly a challenge that has gotten better and continues to. Like Anna said, I taught kayaking for a long time, and I at one point had a group of male students come to me and looked at me and said, "We're not going on the river with her." They proceeded to go on the river with me because there was no one else to take them, swam in this gigantic hole, and I had to rescue all of them. There were people all over my boat, gear, got them all back on the shore, and I got a big tip at the end of the week, and they loved me. So we do have to fight a little harder, but it worked out. More recently, I think the thing, and my biggest pet peeve, is that I own a company with my husband, Immersion Research, and every time we started it together, every blood, sweat, and tear together of this adventure we've been on for almost 30 years, everyone assumes it is his company. Everyone. Just 2 days ago, someone looked right to him and said, "Tell me about your company, and what do you do?" They always say to me.
The cooking, right?
Yeah, definitely not the cooking.
I mean, what do you expect?
Well, those sound really negative, and they're not great. But I don't think it's any different from any other. Whitewater kayaking is an outdoor extreme sport. They're all male dominated. What isn't? I think, and not just sports. These are just part of life as a woman. No, I don't think it's a big surprise to anyone. But I do think that our sport is if you haven't noticed that there's more women on the river from all over the world, then you're not paying attention. I think we're getting to, maybe we're through our adolescence and we're getting more mature and we're evolving. And I think that that's happening. I know that's happening, and I think it's a positive thing. And I see all of this as a challenge, not as a detriment. It can be a challenge. It could be more welcoming, there's no doubt, but that's just part of what we do.
And I don't even need to do transitions. We've mentioned the limitation that you might encounter or barriers that you might encounter as a female paddler, but there's also like very positive experience that have helped us get to where you are. And I think it's also maybe important to highlight that. Like, for example, for myself, I wouldn't be a professional kayaker if some of my guy friends didn't totally broke their NDA and was like, "What? This is what you're getting paid?" And it was very unfair. And then I got I knew what was in their contract, and I could be like, so how come I'm getting paid this? And it really helped me kind of like be able to make a living out of it. Whereas like if Rafa or Rush or Anil hadn't helped me, I would not be there today doing this life that I'm living. So I'm grateful for that. And so did you have like a lot of like positive influence also to help you make your place?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's like, you have to go and find the people that make you feel good paddling, the people that elevate you, that challenge you, that support you. When I was learning how to kayak, I actually had a female instructor at Madawaska Canoe Center named Roxy LaBelle. And she was one of the first people, instructor-wise, that let me progress at my own pace. I think I learned some of the technical skills fairly quickly, a lot faster than I learned to read water. And I was really scared. And I spent a lot of time being really scared. And there was a lot of expectation of almost ironically, that I should be able to do more than I felt comfortable doing. And so finding like her as an early mentor that let me progress at my own pace. And then later finding bosses that believed in me and believed in my skills was a really helpful thing. And then, I'm going to detour slightly and cut me off at any point, New. But I think it's interesting, living in White Salmon, Washington, I mean, there are so many women kayakers. Like, it is a rare day that I am on the water without seeing women on the water, whether that's paddleboarding, whether that's sup foiling, whether that is whitewater kayaking, whether that's the raft guides. And maybe that's unique, or maybe that speaks to the growth that we're seeing. But when I look at the women around me who are starting and learning these sports, and what I see in them is community, having people to learn with, having people to push themselves with, having people to challenge themselves with. It's made me think more about my path. And while I can speak to mentors and I can speak to bosses, I think a lot of it is having good female friends that I enjoyed being on the water with, and made it more fun to learn, and made failing feel less detrimental or less devastating.
I certainly agree with you, Anna, that having good friends or a good community around you helps. I would not necessarily say that I wouldn't restrict it to female. Yeah. So this is what I think say to everyone here. There is a certain point where the gender doesn't matter anymore. So, and I think that's important also to address. So that if you come to a certain point and there's this confidence in your own skills and the confidence within the group, all of a sudden it will not matter anymore. And this whole gender discussion is totally irrelevant. And I think this, for me, were the best moments, being out there, either in very challenging environments, where, out there in the wilderness for 3-4 days without any support, and you're with this small group and you have to rely on everyone the same, no matter, how big, how tall, male or female. Or just recently when, I was kayaking the Grand Canyon with my family, and we had the 4 kids with us, and it just, didn't matter. The son, the daughter, the dad, the mom, we were just all together having the same experience. And I think this is where I would like to come to more often, that you just in this environment as a group of kayakers together, and everyone, is sort of perceived and treated the same.
I'm actually going to just give a really short shout out to Dave Fusilli in the front row here. I met Dave when I was like 19. Dave was already a really good kayaker. He was driving around in the Piranha van, and I was like a total newbie. And people like Dave, I got to come along for 6 weeks, maybe more, riding in probably had no idea what I was doing in the creeking world or in a lot of the kayaking world. And I got to come and ride along in the Piranha van. And even though I wasn't at a level to run a lot of the rivers that they were running. I was able to tag along to help run shuttle, and they would, they would kayak with me in some places, and I would run their shuttle in others. And it was having people like that bring you into the world to show you the full part of it on and off the water is so important. And I will say it was like a huge learning experience and like a really crucial part in, I think, turning me into the paddler and like the person that I am in paddle sports today. So. Hey, gotta shout out Dave. Yeah. Yeah. Sorry, Naina.
Yeah, so I think for me, it's when you have the right intent, everything is great. With what intent you want to support someone, it makes a big difference. And then it doesn't matter if you're a woman or a man. Like when I got the initial support or when my journey as a paddler started, it was all from my male mentors that I had around me. My uncle Eddie and my first instructors, they were all men. And I think whatever they did for me, it's unmatched. And I have so much gratitude to all the mentors I had. But along the way, I also have to mention about Spade, because when I had my first boat, I think that's when I felt that I am seen and I can be supported as well to have a boat, because that was a big thing, having a boat of my own. And it took 3 years for me to have a boat because it just couldn't come to India. It's hard having boats in India. So to have the right people around you who can support you and understand what support means to you, it makes a big difference. And I think Spade has been that driving motive behind my journey. And till date, I think I'm here right now, it's because of them. And it's important to also appreciate that. And there was a time when I realized that because we didn't have female representation, like Anna said that when she's paddling, she would see so many women kayaking. It's very rare in India. I will not see. Now, of course, there are Ganga girls paddling, but like back when I started, there were no girls around me. And of course, I had heard the name Nouria. And when I used to look up to her videos, it was insane. And so to have the representation, it makes a big difference because it makes you feel that if she can do, having the same body biological type, you can feel that you can do it too. And so yeah, like to have the right support, it means a lot coming from a man or a woman. And yeah.
Yeah, I guess I should speak to positives too. To piggyback on what you're saying, when I started kayaking, there weren't a lot of women on the river. It was rare to see one. And when I did, I was I didn't realize at the time, but I was like, oh, there's another woman out there. And my entry really into the sport is I started racing slalom. And I think what drew me to that was there were all these women who were strong and smart and just role models. And while many men have helped me facilitate my career in kayaking along the way, no doubt, my father included and all his friends and the slalom community I grew up with, I think you cannot underestimate how much seeing people like you has an effect on you in the media, in movies and social media, just helping you feel welcome. Just seeing women out on the river, seeing those role models, these pioneers that are doing what they're doing out there, has a huge effect on. It did it to me as a kid, and I know it does to other women. And you don't want to underestimate how important and powerful that is.
Even traveling in the stinky Dempshits van can be like a constructive experience. Who would have known? One of the best ever. I feel like that goes to the next point where like, how can we change things and bring positive? And I think what's really cool with that conversation is there are so many ways. It can be the support from your mentors, your friend, people that you meet along the way, your crew. That can be like women or men, when you're swimming in a hole, like you get the rope, it doesn't matter who's throwing it, you're just stoked to get out. And I think those things that sometimes they might feel insignificant, you know, it can be a coach that is teaching kids and treats them very equal, whether they're little girls or little boys. And so all those things are like affect. And so my next question is like, what are the positive change that we can make? And I'll start with you, Kara, because we we did a dry suit not that long ago with the pee zipper. Because for a girl, the butt zipper to pee is always on the way of the outfitting. So for some girls, they find it very convenient. But with Anna Wagner and Nicole, we hated it. And so we were like, we want a dry suit with the men pee zipper. But if it's too high, like the men, it's harder to use the shiwi. So half of the time you're peeing yourself. So we had to come up with like a different shape and convince them that it was a really good idea when really it's a really shit idea, because we realized that a lot of the women are not comfortable using a plastic device to pee standing. And so like my question to Kara, maybe it's a bit off topic, is like, at which point you're like, okay, I know this is a bad idea, but I'm still gonna go for it.
Okay, you didn't know we would get into anatomy today, but it's so yeah. We some of our top team paddlers really wanted us to develop this dry suit, which we guessed that we wouldn't sell as many comparatively to our dry suit that is easier to get into. We probably sell 5 of those or more to everyone. But we saw it as a challenge, and we saw there was a need for it. And we see the sport changing. And again, I feel like if companies aren't noticing that, they're not paying attention. And that's while that dry suit doesn't sell as much, we still sell plenty, and we're really glad we did it. We took a risk. We got some really good development, and women were wearing dry suits.
Nouria's happy.
I'm really happy. Thank you so much for answering that request. Yeah, are there any? Jutta has a retailer. Do you see any demand from women that are like with the shop, with paddle people? Do you see any specific demand, or do you see things that could be improved for women within the gear or anything?
If we look at the gear, as I said before, you know, there has been done a lot more than there used to be when, you know, the two of us started in the 70s, you know, because all we had, you know, was like the sort of second-hand stuff from dad or big brother or, you know, some uncle or someone else. But I think most important for me were the boats, you know, that when I started freestyle, you know, when I look back at my first freestyle boat, it just was far too big, you know, for anyone's meaning. And if I look at the boat, you know, we are paddling now, I think, oh God, if I had this, you know, 20 years ago, how much difference would that have made to my progress and, you know, the ability to learn and to just enjoy what I was doing. Because I think that's the limitation, you know, if the gear doesn't fit, then it's hard to enjoy what you're doing. It's like, you know, no one expects someone to run 100 meters very fast in shoes that are three numbers too big. So it's not a good experience. So and therefore, I think, yeah, especially with boat designs, I'm very happy that I can now choose between different brands and different models that are still my size, and that it's not just, oh, the one small boat, you know, for the small person anymore. So I think that has been a really huge, you know, change in that. So, and I hope that, yeah, this will carry on and not just feel, oh yeah, we've done this, so we move on and, you know, scrap all of these again at some point.
I know Kara wants to roast me with the small and big boats. Go for it.
Some of us have been quoted as saying that small women don't need to paddle small boats. So I have another thought about that. I did some math, and okay, I had to convert pounds to kilos, so it might be a little rough. You can check on me. But this is, I have 2 points. One is boat weight. Okay. So if you take, and I see some boat designers over here. If you take the percentage of our weight here versus like an average male, we're talking like maybe 25 kilograms, right? And if you take the boat weight, that weight to boat ratio is about 30% for a male and about almost 45% for us, a smaller female, right? That means you would have to add 37 kilograms to the boat of Dave's boat to be in the same weight ratio that we are. That's a lot.
You couldn't
Right?
keep up.
There's a story, Kara, of Risa Shimoda back in the day at Perception. She actually taped the appropriate amount of weight into the male designers' boats and had them carry it around the office to demonstrate the boat-to-body ratio and like the difference it made for some of like the, not even just the hiking in, but like the amount of effort it takes to move the boat with each paddle stroke on the water.
That's really cool. And my other point about the boat design, and I know there are a handful of boat design for women, it isn't so much about volume, because that's another can of worms. But I don't know, and I'd love to know, if we seem to get a boat designed for that average male size, and then they'll size the boat down to a medium or a small. But is anybody building a boat at starting displacing water with, 57 kilograms or 60 kilograms or whatever? That's what I'd like to know. Because I know from slalom, we would often all paddle the same hull, and we cut the boat in half and take out an inch so that there was lower volume. But we're still sitting in the water differently than the boat was designed for, right? So that paddles totally differently, right? So when they shrink the boat, yeah, that's different, but it's not you never get the same performance, I think, as if you had just designed the boat right around that weight and size from start to finish. It's just like us starting with a dry suit. We don't take a men's suit and size it down. We start from the beginning with a woman's body.
But I think that it's very variable depending on the boat company. Like some companies come up with a model and they have 3 different sizes, and they will make a prototype for each size, so that way they can try and adjust. And if they start from the medium, if they have done the work with the prototype, the small is a new boat, but they've put in the work to have a good boat. Sometimes they don't do that. And so you have the boat that is designed for a size, and then it's kind of like the shrunk or the large version for the bigger guys is not optimal. And then you have brands that are like maybe smaller companies that they come up with one dedicated mold, it's one model, and they don't do sizes. So for those brands, the boats are made like with the intention of a public. And so they also make dedicated boats, but there's no right or wrong answer, and there's no good or... Yeah. I think for boats, you just need to try them and see what you like and what suits you. We're all very different. I like really big boats.
I think the important thing, right, is that it's that you have options, that it's not only big boats out there, and that people that prefer the smaller boat have the ability to not only just have one design to choose from, but a range of different designs for different things. And I'm going to take this conversation away from kayak design slightly and make 2 points. One, I think, like what I'm hearing to summarize all of our points in gear, it's that it's important to have gear that fits you well, right? Not only because it's comfortable, but from a safety standpoint. And one of the biggest, most common, I think, gear items that goes across all disciplines of paddle sports is the life jacket, right? And life jackets or personal flotation devices, some of the hardest pieces of gear to get comfortable because we all have so many different body types, torso sizes, torso lengths. And, interestingly, a lot of design research on PFDs, people actually start making the women's specific PFD first or looking for a PFD that fits comfortably on a woman's figure because then it's most likely going to be also comfortable with men. I've heard so many stories from people like Clay Wright who are like, my favorite PFD was always the women's PFD. And it's interesting because at NRS, they recently kind of like took that gender idea and flipped it on its head and went for this whole idea of like what's comfortable, right? And so while I think that there are absolutely a place for women's specific designs, I think that like it's interesting to know that a lot of the regular designs are also kind of based on women's bodies sometimes. And so NRS, if you actually like, they've totally rechanged the way they've designed the PFD, focusing not on men's or women's, but what they're calling this everybody design, which is designed to just look at torso size, look at torso height and weight. And so they've really kind of looked back at like, if we leave gender out of this, like what are the key aspects that we need to fit gear comfortably? And so I think it's a cool story of looking at how like women's design and women's specific design can inform change and design change for like everybody in the industry. Because it's not just women that want a comfortable PFD. We might just be a little bit louder about it. But I think to go back to our original problematic here, one of the things that I'm most excited about outside of gear development in the industry is seeing more and more women behind the scenes in powerful positions in brands and in the industry. Kara, you've built a company. Jutta, you are the head of HF, which is, these are two really successful companies in this industry with long history that both have women at the helm. I'm looking at Emily Jackson, who's taking a larger and larger role at Jackson Kayak. I think that you've got Rowie Knight, who's taking a much larger role in doing stuff at Palm. You've got Lauren, Graham's daughter, Makareth at Piranha, also stepping into more roles. And I think that while we can talk about increasing women's participation in paddle sports, I think that has to start with bringing women into the design room. That has to start with bringing women into the decisions that are made on the bigger picture with brands. Like, I think if you want to increase women's participation, it needs to come both ground up, but also top down. And if you have no women in positions of power and decision making on a higher level for the companies, then you have no voice. And so it doesn't matter how many paddlers you're bringing in if you can't keep them in with people that are there to listen to what they need, what they want, whether that's a bigger boat, a smaller boat, a dry suit with a P-zipper, or a PFD that fits.
About the gear sizes and options, I just want to say that when you have so many options where you can choose, it's easy, and also it's a safety standard. But where I come from, for a very long time, we didn't have access to small PFD. Like for me, I didn't have the gear which was fitting me for a very long time, and I didn't know what was right and wrong. I just went with what was available and what I could access. And for a very long time in India, it has been a problem where we didn't have the right accessibility. But now things are getting better. And I think I also got my breakthrough in 2019 when NRS sent me a bunch of gear and supported me with that. And when I could fit in like a small PFD and have like a small dry suit, I felt like, okay, now I can feel more confident and, there's something that fits me or that has been, and I just know it. So I think it's also a privilege to have access to options, but I'm so happy that now companies are coming to countries like India and other countries and expanding and, making it more inclusive.
Naina before 2019 with the life jacket up to her nose, like paddling.
And helmet like I still need. Very small head. Super annoying. Yeah.
I'm gonna bounce off back to you, Naina. With the Gang Girl project, like maybe you can. With some people have seen the movie, but what's the goal there, and what's your role, not only as an Indian paddler, but also like as this program director?
Oh my God, program director. Nobody ever said that to me.
I'm giving everyone big titles here for this talk. Kara's the boss. John's in the kitchen. And you're program director.
So this project, Ganga Girls, it's very personal and very close to my heart. Ganga is a river in India, which is also considered one of the most holiest rivers, and it's also a lifeline in India. And it's been my home river, and I've been in the lap of this river ever since I started paddling. Not that much, I mean. So this project started about 2 years back when I was majorly influenced by a program in Chile, which is the Chicas al Agua, where young girls are given free kayak instruction. And I was there with the support of NRS and my friends Brooke and Haley. And when I saw that I could paddle with girls outside India, then why can I not have girls in my own country? Why can't I have a river family back home? So as soon as I came back home, I said, I've been alone for a very long time, you know, and now I want to see some more females around me. So I decided to start by a river expedition, but I don't know how to start. So there were some girls who were living on the banks of the Ganga River who actually had all their brothers, entire family, raft guides for a very long time. But the girls were never given that opportunity because they were never seen in those roles of going out there, being a raft guide or a kayaker. And then I said, if I was living on the bank of Ganga River, I would be kayaking every day. So let's just start with you. And I took them kayaking. Of course, their family was not happy where I was taking their girls. You know, it was hard for me to make them trust that, please, just give them one chance, let them come out of the household and this patriarchal system, because they were in the houses, their normal day would be like helping at home, going to school, and at some point get married. And, you know, not choose themselves. And I think for me, it's been kayaking has been a very big transformation in my life. It has given me confidence in ways that I think I cannot imagine, just that you need in life in general. So I went to them and I started kayaking with them, and their brothers were also a little apprehensive that our sisters will be kayaking, you know, like, is that possible? And then when they started, it was also the first time they got out of their houses and saw the real world. And then when they started kayaking, they saw so much potential in themselves and started valuing themselves more than just limiting, you know, or being under this thing that a deeply rooted, embedded thing that we have in our culture, that women are supposed to be like this. And when they did the first expedition, it was also my first time doing a multi-day on the Ganga River with the girls. And I felt complete. I felt like this is what I've been waiting for. And that was one of the most beautiful experiences. And I think, coming back to the main question, that what is this project about? It's basically about bringing or supporting underprivileged girls, people, and especially survivors of human trafficking, or anyone who's been through a very hard time in life, because I am very sensitive to, you know, like, I've been in places or situations where I was very close to being trapped, or, you know, like, that's a different story, but like,
So, 7 lives.
So, you know, because these people have gone through so much hardship in their life, being trafficked and not being able to choose what you want. So these girls are actually survivors of human trafficking, and the idea is to make them experience kayaking and the power of healing from the Ganga River, which is actually one of the most holiest or spiritual rivers in the world. And so, yeah, this project is pretty much about creating a safe space for each other, being there for each other, and just experiencing the power of kayaking. And it's just such a beautiful sport, you know.
So we see that programs can have a really positive effect. And I'm going to turn around to our communication marketing specialist.
Oh boy.
And representation of women within the sport is all yours.
Wow. Yeah, super light topic here. Okay, several things to talk about here. So many. I think Kara said it really well earlier, is that representation does matter, right? And that's both how many and how much you are seeing other women in your chosen discipline and in your chosen sport. And also, as Nouria pointed out with that photo of Laura, you know, kind of the way that women are also being portrayed and represented. Okay, quick question for the audience here. Which is sexier, supping or kayaking? Yeah, wrong answer, actually. I don't know if you know this, but we wear a lot of gear kayaking. You know, and I think like when you look at one of the reasons that like I think supping initially took off and has had a lot of media representation is one word, two pieces, also an island known as the bikini, right? And so I think if you look at like a lot of the sup imagery and stuff like that out there, women often have a real challenge to be not only one, portrayed in the media, but two, portrayed not as like sexual objects or something that is sexualizing a sport, but as actual athletes and actual participants here for, you know, these very real reasons that like Naina just has called attention to, you know? And so I think that like working in the media side of things, on the brand side, it's a big conversation, right, is this diversity question. And I know that that's a buzzword, and I know that that word will probably get me canceled in some places. But I think that, you know, as brands, if you're looking to increase participation in paddle sports, you need to be conscious of the imagery that you are choosing and the women that you are, the models that you are using, whether they are male or female. And I think especially with the female models, and that goes from, you know, the way that they are being portrayed to like the different ages and sizes and the diversity that exists within each gender. Kayak session, as some of you, cut me off if I go too long here. Anyone else want to jump in on that one?
So bring up the controversy, Bruno.
Okay, well, for those of you that are maybe unaware, there's this little magazine called Kayak Session magazine, whitewater kayaking magazine. Has anyone heard of it? Yeah, you guys can pick up a copy at the front door. And there is a big controversy a few years ago where a young woman decided to call out very publicly on social media without doing, unfortunately, some proper research, the fact that there have been many less women featured on the cover of Kayak Session than men. And go ahead, Nu, would you like to?
Which is also a representation of the sport in general. And I feel like what's maybe important to highlight is like, do you want more representation just as number? Or do you also want your representation to be specific? I used to be really upset opening up like Kayak Session and seeing advertising from the brands. And every single time there was a woman, it was like super cheesy on class 1, and I was like, this is unacceptable. Why am I seeing Martina Wegman, who's one of the best paddling class 1 without a helmet on, when like she's so much more than this? And at the same time, sometimes I see like a lot of like waterfall hard class 5 clips, and I'm like, yeah, it's good to see women like going hard and you know, running the stouts like the boys, but it also makes it inaccessible because sometimes you watch these things and you're like, oh, way too dangerous or not for me. And so I don't know what's the answer to representation, actually.
It's a hard question, right? And I think Naina brought this up at the very beginning where she said, you know, people like were telling me I couldn't do this because I'm a woman, and now that I've had success and I'm getting some exposure, people are telling me it's because I'm a woman. And so I think when choosing a cover shot, you know, it's like, does we want the main criteria for choosing a cover shot to be someone's gender? Or do we want it to be the quality and the beautiful imagery and the visuals of the shot? And so personally, the problem isn't so much that, oh, the magazine is sexist and we never choose to put a woman on the cover. The question is, where are the photographers that are making the effort to work with female athletes to create quality images? Why are there not more female athletes putting their primary focus on their own personal exposure and promoting themselves through doing that work, going out, working with photographers, creating relationships? Because it's, you know, you can be a really talented paddler and it can be very challenging to get quality media of you unless you're treating that aspect of being an athlete as a full-time job. And there's a lot of reasons that I could go into about why I think that's harder for women, or less women seem to prioritize that. But so, the question I think becomes, as you were saying, it's like it's really important to have women in all levels of whitewater. It's really important not to only focus on super hardcore, very limiting niche sections of paddle sports, but you also need to generate quality images. And so what does that mean, and what does that look like, and who is the audience that decides that? And so there's so much behind this. Sorry, I'm going really long. Jutta, please take over. No, please, anyone? Yeah.
It's actually not a question, but I would like to jump in to what you just said, Anna, because so we have a paddle calendar at home, and I keep watching at that paddle calendar, and I'm like, there's no woman. Not in any of the 12 pictures is a woman. Why not? Is this photographer just not going to trips with women? And so I was like, instead of being here and thinking, why is there no woman? Let's make my own calendar. So I'm trying. It's still in the process of trying, and I don't know why I did it to myself, to bring out a calendar next year with women. And so I asked for pictures on Instagram, that people sent me pictures in. And I've noticed that I really struggle with getting good quality pictures, because I would like to print a big calendar because they just look so much better on the wall, and it's just a personal preference. But I struggle to really get pictures that are in a high enough quality from people that are not sponsored by any brand, or that are not in the industry as teachers or anything. And so I have a question that I may be thinking, a lot of women might be thinking what I am doing is not worthy enough to bring a big camera. It's not worth to bring a big camera on a class 2 to 3 or a 3 to 4. And I would really wish that for next year, if I'm doing it again, that I would really hope that the women that are not in the calendar because they didn't have a high enough resolution picture for printing A2, that they see it as a motivation for next year. Bring the cameras, tell my people to bring a camera, ask people around, because we don't need just class 5 stout shots, that they are good pictures. So yeah, I see exactly this, and I see that I think people think that it's not worth enough to bring that.
I'm going to be a bit of an advocate of the devil here. And it's not related to our topic, but in our sport, a lot of the time, I feel like people just take for granted the images, but you have people like photographers or filmers that are working for these, they're buying expensive gear, and a lot of the time, whether it's brands or personal use or social media, I feel like using their work is also disrespectful. So I try to never send quality photos that have been taken by a photographer, because it's theirs, and always ask permission. And because we've seen too many of these things happening, and some of the best photographers in the sport, whether that's Jasper or Eric Parker, they just stopped shooting because brands were not paying, and now we don't have too many good people, and so we have to take care of them and not steal their work. And I think it's important to really respect work from David, who's here, or Christophe also as well, and that is going beyond gender as well.
To your point about media's portrayal of waterfalls in class 5 and whether that's intimidating, I feel like I've heard that argument pretty much my whole life, always. And my take is that it's aspirational. People don't want to see. Are we motivated to just paddle class 2 and never want to progress? I think you don't
have to want to run a waterfall to appreciate a photo of one.
Absolutely. And so I feel like we should just put the argument behind us. Like, let's show what we are and what we do, right? More stouts. Let's just leave it at that. So if you look at this, the whole point of this conversation, women's participation in the sport, we know that, the world is made up pretty much of 50-50 men to women, right? More or less. Is that the ratio in this sport? Absolutely not. I don't know what it is. I don't know if anybody has that statistic. No.
I can speak like to the metrics that you see on social media accounts, which is like typically like a 60-40 split is really good, and most of the time it's like roughly 70-30. So 70% men to 30% women that are like following or engaging with content in a lot of in different paddle sports brands.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. So I guess when we're talking about barriers, I think we just we've talked about some of them, and I feel like we're moving towards a place where it's the barriers are the same for men and women in the sport. Like it's not the easiest sport to get into, right? Like it's scary. And so it's scary to men and it's scary to women. That's the bottom line. But that's never going to go away. We can't make that go away. Culturally, I feel like the group, we've been through this. We've had ups and downs, but we spoke as much as male mentors as women, and and people have helped us along the way. I think that in terms of like the media coverage on the power of seeing women in this sport doing these things, I think we're reaching a tipping point from people, and it has to do, I don't know the answer exactly why, if the sport's growing or maturing, but we're seeing more women leading the charge. I think one, if not the best kayaker in the world, is sitting up here right now. Yep. Kayaker, period, man or woman. And I think what we're going to see is the ratio of the cover of Kayak Session, women's representation going up. It's going up, and bringing the photographers and the good cameras and getting that's work we need to do. And some of us, are still running that stuff, are doing it.
Yeah.
So and I think we're just seeing it's a challenge, and it's improving. It's getting better.
Yeah, and I will say, while there might not have been that many images of women on the cover of Kayak Session, there is female representation in almost every issue, whether that is an interview, whether that is in the gallery, whether that is in the columnists. I think it's like if you can't do it somewhere, or just because it's not happening the loudest doesn't mean it's not there.
Well, following up on what you said is, representation, and we have to build on it. And I think, that's why we are here, each in their role, to try and inspire people, to inspire young girls to start to paddle, to inspire young adults who pick a profession to maybe think about, I could work at a brand, at an established brand, or I could, I've got a good idea, I can come up with my own brand. Just try to really get more ladies, female paddlers or female professionals involved, and also maybe, inspire them to live to their potential, because there's no reason why they can't do what we are doing and what the men in the industry are doing. Is just to create like opportunities and help along the way to get more numbers in several roles than we have.
Was that our conclusion? Or Bruno, you want to add something? Are there any questions, comments? No? Sweet. See, we came up with a question and we have absolutely no answers for you. Thank you for listening. We tried. I feel like there is also, we always approaches as like women, but we are all different. We have different needs. We have different aspirations. And, we also need to make space in this sport, not just for women, for everyone. And it doesn't matter what's your gender, where you come from, and I feel that's going to be the next big challenge of paddle sports. It's a hard sport to get into, because you're scared, you wet. It takes a lot of gear. You need someone to teach you. So I feel like the main challenges are gonna be to find like a more inclusive way to get within the sports, whether that's through the club, the program, access to gear. And there's so many ways to do that. And I hope that everyone around here have really cool ideas and that they do it and we can all support each other, whether we want to paddle small or big boats.